A very good morning to all of you. Today we are going to discuss the chapter The Amazing Story of Kipchoge Keino. So, students, here in this chapter, there has been shown few of the games. There are many players who have suffered injuries and then made a grand comeback. So, the chapter is also giving you the same message. There is no substitute for hard work and perseverance. This has been proved time and time again by many individuals in various fields. In the field of sports, story of Kip Keino is perhaps the most inspiring story. Here is a man with a never say die attitude. He was sometimes down but never out, and his dreams came true as they always do for those who never give up. Kipchoge Keino, just Kif, is a retired athlete who ran for the country of Kenya. Throughout his career, Kip earned almost a dozen medals, half of which were gold, for being an amazing middle to long distance runner. The story we want to share is the time Kip was almost late for his own race and had to run to get there, then won a gold medal anyway, despite another major adversity in that race, which we will get to in a minute. First, a little info on the man himself because he is awesome. We will start with his name. Kipchoge is a Nandi expression for something to the effect of born near the green store sit. If you guessed he came from humble beginners, you would be right. Things didn't get better when both of his parents died when he was very young. He then moved in with his aunt who raised him. And when once asked about his childhood and how he got started running, this was Kip's response. What how he responded? He said, "When I started at primary school, I ran in my bare feet for miles to school in the morning, home for lunch, again for afternoon school, and back at the end of the day. I did this every day until I left school." If your mind is still trying to work out the maths for that one, Kip ran 16 miles every single day in Kenyan heat without shoes just to get to school. And Kip managed this starting at 5 years old. Okay, when he was of 5 years of age, he started just take that run. You may think that with this impressive running ability, Kip was destined to be a runner. After finishing school, though, he didn't immediately get into competitive running. Instead, Kip became a physical training instructor for the Kenyan police force. At the time, Kenya was not the runner generating powerhouse it is today. In fact, Kip was one of the first great runners and country produced. It wasn't until the early 1960s that Kip realized that his thighs demanded a great challenge and he took up competitive athletics on the side from his day job. Though Kip was ultimately one of the finest distant, distance runners of his time, perhaps one of the finest of all time, he didn't achieve significant results until the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, where he narrowly missed qualifying for the 1500 meter final. Then 1 year later, in 1965, Kip broke two distance running world records, and these were 1500 meter and 5000 meter events respectively. At the 1965 All Africa Games, a year after that impressive feat during the 1966 Commonwealth Games, Kip won a double gold in the mile and 3 mile sprint events. His greatest feat came 2 years later during 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. And we say greatest feat because for the entire duration of the games, Kip was suffering from crippling gallstones. And we mean crippling. Kip literally collapsed while running the 10,000 meter. This was especially cruel when you realize that Kip was in the lead when the pain overwhelmed him and he had only 3 laps to go by stepping off the track after he collapsed. He would automatically disqualified himself. Determined to finish the race anyway, he stumbled back onto the track and despite the pain, he managed to do the final laps, even though it didn't count. The eventual winner of that race was one Naftali Temu, another Kenyan who now holds the honor of being Kenya's first gold medal winner, an honor that almost went to Kip. Now, this is where the story gets interested. And what we came to know, the prior to running 10,000 meter, Kip had been told by a doctor not to run, that any strain to his body was at the risk of causing him serious harm. He kept on, and on the top, he then ran another 15-meter race and qualified for the finals of the events. At that point, you may think Kip was tempting fate, but we will still not done. The day of 1500-meter final, Kip presumably due to the fact of he had gallstones elected to sleep in there was the thought that he would simply choosing he would simply here yes he was simply what he was doing, he was simply choosing not to race that day when his absence was noticed, given the day before he had indicated he might not given his medical problem. Nevertheless, only an hour before the actual events, he hopped out to bed and headed off to the games. Then he registered with 20 minutes to spare, got himself ready, and walked out onto the track and won a gold medal, outpacing the second place runner by an astounding 20 meters, the longest distance had ever anyone had ever won by in the event that time. But he got. Not only this, the man he beat was such a huge margin, Jim Ryan had been also defeated in 1500-meter in 3 years. Further, Kip had now raced 5 times in that Olympics, while Ryan was completely fresh. And of course, that's not the mention of the gallstones. In the end, Kip finished with a time of 3:34.9, the second fastest in the history at that point. To put in the slightly more common terms, that's a pace of 25.13 kilometer per hour. And if we are just going to talk about the this victory seriously, go watch and race here and realize that not only is Kip's running with a constant stabbing pain in his abdomen, but he had just ran 2 miles to the stadium in sweltering Mexican heat. Then feel angry when you scroll down and see that the video's description. After this victory, Kip went on to win several more medals before eventually settling down in Kenya, where he currently runs a charity for orphans as well as helped found a primary and secondary school. For his many humanitarian works. In his post professional career, he was inducted into the World Sports Humanitarian Hall of Fame. I hope you liked this article and how the Kenyan player fought throughout his career. So that is the story full of struggle of uh, Kipchoge Keino. Read this story once more for your better understanding. Goodbye. Have a nice day.